All right, Dave.
I think it's fair to say we have a few more questions than we're going to have time for here. They will all be noted, hopefully, before sometime I think is.
Okay, so the feedback here is Jonathan said we had more questions come in than we had time to get to. So we're going to track them and see that we can follow up, figure out how we can follow up with them. So we will see how we can slot in all of that. Just signal me early if there's stuff going on for Dave. So Dave Dimov, who is our lead QA analyst and the lead of our core support team. I think what's unique about our core support team is that it's basically QA for engine and tools.
Yeah, and it didn't really exist, but like you said 2, 3 years ago. Back when I started in 2012, it was kind of just me doing testing the tools, making sure things are actually working, and going around helping out the production, try to get them set up. Now we have another tester. We have 2 programmers on our team as well, so it's changed quite a bit.
So it's also interesting, I think, because it strikes a balance between sort of handling things from two sides, right? So it's not just the sort of the last line of defense, which it very much is, testing the engine and tools before it goes out to sort of set that quality bar, right? Is this good enough to release to production, to each of these games? It's also handling the incoming, right? These are all the support requests. These are all the problems people have, and managing
Most of
that.
the tools buzz pretty much go through me, and I try to get to the right team, right person to get it looked at, and kind of get it looked at in the right amount of time as well.
So if we're going to look at the support requests coming in, right, and how you handle that, what's the process for triaging something?
We have a LunaRest email thread where if someone has an issue, they hit up LunaRest. If it's something that, say, I just go to their desk and handle, I'll go ahead and do that. Or Robbie or other tester will do the same thing. Otherwise, we'll get a bug in and get the bug to the right person, and they can eventually look at it.
All right. Well, what about from the other side, sort of the qualitative side, in terms of like checking things before they go out? What's our process? I mean, I know that if we're looking at this from a sort of a big picture point of view, right? I want to talk a little. We have some questions about sort of continuous integration and that process. We have some of that, but really. We lean very heavily on the human factor, right? On the human testing factor. So what's our process for that?
Yeah, ideally, we'd have more automation, but yeah, we depend on our tester to actually go through a test plan. When I first started, I'd basically try and test everything I could, make sure things work, just straight up an editor, you could point and click and bring up an asset. Now our process is more about trying to actually create content the way a developer would. So it's evolved since then.
So we have a huge number of tools, right? We have tools that will handle cinematics and materials and textures and scripting and all the things that slip my mind at the moment. But hundreds of things. So that's just a huge volume of stuff to test, right? Tools that have been built up over years and years and years with lots of difficult edges and odd cases. How is it that you sort of manage the testing process of such a scale?
It's really how we build the test plan in terms of trying to create, say, a level, go from the level, try to create content for the level, try to make sure the level loads, make sure you build a visual effect, put it in the level, make sure that loads, and kind of just the whole process of actually building something.
Right. So it's sort of a content creation plan is sort of sampling through each of the asset types. How often really in practice, right, does stuff slip through? How often you're missing something in that test plan?
There's always something that gets missed, but we try to learn from that and try to add it to our test plan. Whether production finds something that after our tools release goes out, we'll try to get that in our next test plan so we actually catch it the next time.
I know, when we talk about continuous integration, we talk about tools testing. The one comment's inevitably going to be, well, why don't you just automate all the testing, right? Why don't you just do this automatically? What is it that makes that difficult, at least in our unique case?
It really needs the human factor, I think. There's just so much that automated testing just can't catch. There's just too many variables. One thing we do try to do is get production involved in terms of testing stuff, so they'll run through how they work, since it's going to be probably pretty different than the way we test. So we try to learn from them, basically.
So, if in terms of production, somebody from production coming over and testing something, right? I mean, I think that one of the things that we found is even if they're coming over and testing something, even that workflow, while still better than ours, is still different from what they would actually do at their own desk in reality, working on a real problem, right?
Right.
How do we capture that information?
We try to get a little more shadowing going. Our tester Robbie will go and actually shadow someone working and try.
So by shadowing, you mean we just sit behind them and
Yeah.
watch them work, really?
Right.
How often is that going on?
Usually it's during our test cycle when we try to release our tools release. We'll have them either come by or we'll go to their desk, get them a beta, get them working on it. We'll see how they do things. They'll catch certain things that we just would never see.
I think that also speaks to sort of the usability aspect of this, right? I mean, what is it? What do we gain from that shadowing process that also affects our usability?
There are things that they just think that just doesn't work quite well for them. Usually, but things though, we can't really just depend on how one person feels about something. They might want something to make it easier for them, but someone else might think that's just not as easy or the best way to go about it.
Well, in terms of real production, right? I mean, I think that's a common refrain, right? Is everybody wants something different, right? And especially when we're talking about UI, it's sort of super easy to bike shed in that space, and super easy just to say, I want this change, and this would be slightly better,
Right.
and people get into sort of big debates on what color the button should be, or how far down it should be, or whatever. How is it that you manage, collecting up all that feedback and figuring out really what is the solution that's going to work best for us in terms of the qualitative bar?
We really depend on the leads in production to really try to get all the feedback and make sure that's the right thing to actually implement or take out or change.
So for you, it really comes down to that sort of communicating well with the production lead, sort of just saying, we've got all this from your team, you decide. what's the
More or
most
less,
important thing, right?
Yes,
Is that kind
definitely.
of, yeah? All right. In terms of, the team really being about quality and setting that quality bar for the engine, I want to hear what quality means to you.
To me, it's kind of a balance between polish and what's expected with tools. I mean, we could spend time making things look pretty and whatever, but we really want to just make sure it's functional and people can actually do their work. That's kind of the thing that we really try to get to.
So it's just sort of measuring how efficient and effective they are at their job, and they being, the people working on the game production, right? All right. When I don't remember where I was going with that question, so we will move on. I want to talk a little bit about the branch arrangement that we have. We don't work just live in each of the games. We're
Right.
supporting, say, 5 or 6 games all at the same time. We are working as an engine team, releasing all those to all of them. Can you sort of step us through the process of where the engine team works, how that test release works, or where those branches are? Sort of what's the big picture of that?
Yeah, so basically we have a core branch where a core, adds their features, adds code, does their thing there. Production works in a develop branch, separate. So we have a develop branch for I-20 or the Spider-Man game and all the other Oculus projects and other projects that they have.
So we have what we call core devel, which
Right.
is the forward branch for everybody in core.
Right.
And we have each
Production.
project has its own devel branch, which is their forward branch in each of those individual production branches. And each one basically has a copy of the engine, right? A released copy. So how do we get from here to there?
So about every 3 weeks, we try to take everything from core to a staging branch. And from the staging branch, it splits up to each project has its own tool branch where we do all our testing. And from there, once we verify things are actually working, the tools actually work, we'll push it out to the develop branch.
Right.
And we will also bring that develop branch code back to core, so things are in parallel to each other.
So about once every 3 weeks, roughly, we create a tools release from the staging branch. We've integrated out, so we have this sort of checkpoint where we've integrated out from core devel. We integrate all the games into the staging branch, and then we release it back out to each one of those, right? And the core branch basically has a unique copy of every single game, because those all get integrated back, right? So looking at both ends are about 3 weeks off of each other in one direction or another, roughly, right?
We try to do more integrations back from the develop branch into core, so there's a little more updated.
So we do a sort of an extra integration. But this also applies to assets as well, right?
Assets
You need to
and code,
be
yeah.
somewhat synced up. So how does that integration process work?
It's a pretty big integrate. We have release engineers who actually do that for us, so that's not quite on us, which is nice.
All right. Let's talk about your team a little bit. I mean, you mentioned that there's you, a full-time tester, and 2 programmers.
Right.
How does the responsibility of sort of a core support team work? How does that break up? What does it mean to have that team?
For our tester, he tests most of the tools, but that he also helps out with production and does support there. Our programmers, we try to rely on them to actually build content and build um, uh, systems to actually help core and production as well. So it's basically we're trying to support production and core.
So what was in terms of the sort of the creation of this team, what was the most surprising thing to you?
Having programmers is pretty different to be a lead of, I think. I really depend on them and trying to trust them on their feedback and what they're doing in terms of just what they're working on and then scheduling things out and just actually getting things done.
So you are really the only non-programming lead
Right.
of programmers in the core team. How do you deal with not getting snowed by programmers under sort of technical detail, right? How do you call out bullshit when programmers are just saying, well, I'm just going to do something,
Right.
and I'm just going to recompile, blah, blah, blah. And
I really trust them to actually, to be honest with me, of course. They give me daily updates, what they're doing. We have daily meetings in the morning. I also have them go and talk to other people on core and actually discuss with them as well. So it's not just dependent on me, it's dependent on the whole team kind of talking to each other.
right, so part of this is sort of leaning on the other leads and other teams inside of
Definitely.
core to sort of double check what's going
Right.
on, does it make sense, and that sort of thing. Right, all right. Do we?
Yeah, I got a few questions. So, what value do you place on automation for QA? How much is automated? Anything you feel you can't automate?
Okay, the question is, what value do we place on automation for QA? What's automated, and what do we feel we can't automate?
Not enough is automated, I think. We just got the game automation, which is nice.
So by game automation, what you mean is that what we have is an automated load test that will check in, that will automatically load into specific points within the game, basically sampling.
Right.
We'll sample throughout the game, and especially in an open world game, that's particularly difficult, right? How do you sample? Where do you sample from? But we find some set of samples, and it spits out a bunch of data, profiling data, screenshots, et cetera.
If there's an issue.
Right, and reporting frame rate and all those things, right? So what are the things that we automate in that space?
Well, what we don't automate is stuff in the tools itself, which I would like to change eventually in the future.
So we don't have like a system for saying click on a bunch of stuff
No.
and
That's where the human factor comes in.
Right.
I think that's a little more tougher to automate.
right. How would you approach that automation process?
I mean, we've been talking about maybe just auto loading the level within the editor and just kind of get things just loading up there just to see if there's anything that's going to crash
Right.
or break.
So treating the tools maybe in the same way that we treat the game,
Right.
sort of a sampling,
Right.
load up specific things and just see that it
But
gets
it's
the result
still
you want.
definitely not going to take away the human factor, though. We
Right.
still need people to go in and look at things.
I think it should be pointed out that when we can look at other examples and other instances of automated testing in particular, and we've seen, for instance, Unity's testing where they'll do render shots and do comparisons of the renders and make sure that that nothing has changed, within some error rate between those pixels, and we don't do anything like that. I think we're constantly talking about where we can do better. But we definitely, I think, lean heavily on the side of human QA. For better or worse, that's kind of just how we do it.
Which for us, I mean, we like Unity, they don't release probably every 3 weeks, I imagine. Our group, we have to release every 3 weeks. We have to make sure that runs, and automation would be great, but we don't have that.
Might make faster, though.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. Jonathan, was there something else?
Is there any time set aside for ad hoc or freestyle testing?
The question is there any time set aside for ad hoc or freestyle testing?
So that week,
Other than production.
the week where we're not actually doing tools release, we test in the core branch and try to find things early on, basically.
Right. So is there anything that sort of guides that testing, or is it really just jumping around anywhere?
It's really about what features are coming in that we know about. We want to make sure we kind of focus there, basically new stuff that's coming in.
So I think to get to the concrete question of how do you know what's coming in, right? I think people can imagine a solution in which there's some automated way of doing that. You're marking up change lists or something like that. How is it that you know, in your specific case, what's coming in?
We can check change lists and all that, but we also do depend on the team to really come to us and let us know that they're implementing this feature. They need to get tested. We want to make sure that's ready for production before it gets integrated out.
Which probably just means email, right?
Yeah.
Someone emailed you.
Or them coming up to us.
Or physically, yes. All right.
Okay. Question about shadowing. Why is shadowing a QA task? Is it something that other developers do and not QA? Is QA in charge of usability? Who is in charge of usability?
All right. That was a tweet?
It's an aggregate of
All right. So why is shadowing a QA test? One, core support maybe more properly. I mean, it's part of that. But the other question is, are other people doing it? And the other part of the question is who's in charge of usability? I think that covered that basically. So let's start with, is shadowing itself a sort of a core support task?
I think so, yes. I mean, we need to know how people work, and I think that helps a lot. People work differently, so knowing more about how they work just helps us to actually relay to the rest of the team, the editors, how they should be working.
I think, though, speak to the heart of the question, I don't think it's unique to core support. There's certainly other groups in core will shadow teams. And to an even greater degree, we've had people who will, basically be, design intern for a week or whatever, take other people's jobs for a certain period of time to sort of learn as much as possible about that process. So no, in that way, I think it is a core support task in as much as it's a task for everyone.
It's a core task, I think. Everyone in core should really kind of do that at some point.
To speak to the other aspect of this question in terms of usability, I mean, my impression is going to be, I think my point of view is going to be the same. It's sort of is a responsibility of everybody. But from your point of view, who is responsible or who is ultimately responsible for usability?
It does fall on core support to actually kind of guide the usability and kind of get that info to the rest of the core teams actually implementing the stuff. So it's a little bit of both, just core support and the rest of core.
So what are the biggest usability challenges that you see?
Just the way that people do work differently. Something that might be great for someone, but might be really bad for someone else. And really try and find that balance.
So how do you generally approach that balance?
Kind of get a consensus of what's best to do.
So the least evil.
Yeah.
All right. Am I off now? All right. We're back on. We're good. Jonathan, do we have anything else?
Yeah. So are project or production developers empowered to make changes to core code? And if so, how do you handle breakages that result?
Right. So
I think you went off again.
I went off again? Am I?
There you go.
All right. Back on now. Are programmers in production empowered to change core code?
You want to switch?
No, because you have to talk too. You can't just give me your mic.
I'm okay.
Are programmers in production empowered to change core code?
Here you go.
Don't say cool.
All right?
Yes.
Yes? All right. So are programmers in production empowered to change core code? And if so, how do we handle that?
There has been breakage from production within core code that caused issues with the editor.
So
before.
to start with, the answer is yes, they can change it.
They can, and they have. I think the general rule is for them to really not mess with the core code.
Well, I think the real rule is that that what we expect is a review. So if someone in production wants to change something in the engine, there's a sort of an expected review process where they'll say, I want to make this change. Could somebody in core review this for me before I put it in, just so that we can see, make sure we can double check the impact outside of that particular project. But the same is also true in reverse, that if we want to change something in a specific game, in the game code, in order to account for something in the engine, we also need that to be reviewed by all the programmers in production.
The nice thing is that when we touch their code, they usually have core support tests to make sure. The truth can be said the other way around. Sometimes they make changes that we don't really get to see until it's too late into production.
Okay. Another. Here we go. Is there performance testing as well as functional testing when sampling points in the game world?
Is there performance testing as well as functional testing when sampling points in the game world, which is really about the auto loader?
Yeah, the auto load test kind of is meant for that, I believe.
So the main, the main priority of that really is getting a history of performance, right? It's dumping out not just sort of like FPS at that point, at that sample point, but also other performance profiling data. And this is all, we've had similar systems at different points in time, but relatively new. And Alon, when we talk to him at some point, may be able to speak to this in more detail.
Just checked it in yesterday.
So, yes.
Okay. One more for now. What types of core engine errors still get through and take down production teams?
What types of core engineers still get through and take down production teams? What's our most common cause?
Recently, it's been a lot of render stuff because that's constantly changing, which is
Do we have anybody from the render team here? Oh,
that guy. not the at the fault of render, but since things are changing so much with render all the time, that kind of hinders us quite a bit.
right. And what is it that makes it difficult to test in particular?
For the in-game stuff, we kind of rely on game QA to really run through and find things out. So if they miss something, it kind of gets out there.
So I think, I mean, in terms of the differences between QA and core support, I think what we've seen happen here is while you have originally came from the game QA team, and Robbie, our tester on the team, also came from the QA team, what we see is over time you guys are concentrating on the engine and tools so much, you sort of lose that connection with the game and testing in particular, right? So some of those things that just show up in the game context, and we're not spending as much time there, so we miss some of that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of times people expect me to kind of know a lot about the game, and I don't, just because I'm not in it all that much. So I rely on game QA to go to them and find out whatever needs to be found out about the game.
All right. Jonathan, was there anything else?
Go with one of your own.
All right. So let's talk about, I think the hardest question, looking at other teams, is in building a core support team, and building an engine support team really of any kind, is determining what that sort of ROI on the team is. Is it really worth putting together, I mean, really what amounts to a quarter of our engine team is dedicated to QA and support. Is it really worth it? And justify your job, Dave.
I think it's worth it. I think before I came onto core, a lot of the production issues that came up, people from core would actually have to go and help out and figure those things out and deal with that. I like to think that us kind of taking that front end from all that support side kind of lets core do their job and be more productive. So I think that's a good ROI.
Right. So it's really, I mean, for you, it's really about, taking the load off of the rest of the team and making sure that they can sort of concentrate on the things they need to concentrate on. So less switching on their part, more focus, ideally.
And there are times where I have to go and grab somebody to help something out, but
less often.
less
right?
often, yeah.
And hopefully similarly, less errors are out into production, and
definitely.
they're actually, down less. So,
Right.
All right.
When you push from core to each game, when tools are released, do you run QA on each of them before pushing to those games?
Right. So when we push a tools release out to each game, do we run testing out to each game before we push it out? One of the things that I want to point out here before we answer that question specifically is sort of the big question sort of a logistical question I think that every team needs to answer when they have supporting multiple teams is sort of the push or pull model, right? Are you relying on those individual production teams to pull in when they want to pull in, you know, the engine and tools, or you're pushing it out to them and saying, here's a release, you need this one. And, you know, we've played with the idea of push or pull over time and clearly landed on push. From your point of view, what's the value of push here? Why do we do it this way?
I think there's just the fact that we get the tools out in a timely manner. We're not depending on production to really get the tools out. We're depending on our team solely, pretty much.
So it's just about that sort of consistency,
Yeah.
that you kind of know where everything is at, and it just makes it a little bit easier for everyone, right? All right, but let's go to the specific question then, which is, do we, you know, as we release each of these to each of the projects, right, and we're doing, you know, every 3 weeks, we're releasing to 5 different projects and 5 different tools, and each of those is deeply tied into their games, right? Their cinematics tool is running their game. Do we test each one of those?
Yes, we do. So basically, we have 1 week of testing with our main project, which is Spider-Man right now. Once we do that full week of testing, we'll go to the other projects, the Oculus projects currently, and do another testing cycle in there. So we're trying to cover each project before it goes out.
All right.
Yeah. How do you determine success for the QA team? How do you identify a good tester / lead or a suboptimal test process? You want to read it again?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you determine success for the QA team? How do you identify a good tester or a poor process?
All right. How do you define success for the QA team?
Yeah.
How do you define a
How do you
good?
identify a good tester?
What do you mean by good tester? And how do you
Identify a poor process.
identify a poor process?
For probably the first two is the results. If we put out a tools release where, you know, we're not stopping production, they're not hung up on anything, I think that's we hit something good. Same thing with the tester. If he's finding stuff beforehand, actually being diligent, and actually, you know, supporting core and production while doing the same thing, he's a good tester.
And how do we know when a process is working or not working?
The results. If we're pushing something out that's breaking people, obviously something needs to be changed, something needs to be redone.
So I think that kind of summarizes our general methodology in general, which is if it works, we do more of that. If it doesn't work, we do less of that.
Right.
That's kind of our whole process in a nutshell of everything, right?
And things change pretty often too, so we got to keep changing things up.
All right. Okay. So thanks, Dave, for your time.
Cool.
And
Thank you.
all right.
All right.